Our top story, Attorney General Merrick Garland back in the hot seat today, testifying on Capitol Hill before the Senate Judiciary Committee on a series of controversies, most notably a school board memo that compares parents to terrorists. Take a listen.
Well, I have in my hand right here that I'll submit to the record a letter from one of your U.S. attorneys to all of the county attorneys, to the Attorney General, to all sheriffs, to the School Board Association of his state, in which he talks about federal investigation and prosecution. It's not about meetings, it's not about coordination, it's about federal investigation and prosecution. Did you direct your U.S. attorneys to issue such a letter?
I did not. I have not seen that letter.
It's got 3 pages. It's got 3 pages of spreadsheet about all the federal crimes that a parent could be charged with. You aware of conversations between your Department of Justice officials and White House officials and the members of the School Board Association all cooperating together, which is why you were able to move in 4 days, Judge. 4 days, 2 of which were weekends.
As I said, I am sure there were conversations with the White House. I have no idea whether there were conversations with the School Board Association.
Well, I bet we're going to find out if there were, and if it doesn't happen now, it'll happen in 15 months when Republicans are in charge.
Well, there's
this testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
Okay, that's not correct.
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court. You should resign in disgrace, Judge.
Here now, Karol Markowicz, New York Post columnist. Karol, I know you watched today. What did you make of Attorney General Merrick Garland, who would not disavow the memo that he wrote targeting parents, despite the fact that the National School Boards Association did walk back that at least language calling parents domestic terrorists?
Well, I think Mr. Grassley said it best when he said that the letter that the School Board Association had sent out has been disavowed. So now do you disavow the memo which implied that parents would be targeted as domestic terrorists for daring to speak out at their school's school board meetings? And Merrick Garland really didn't have a lot of answers for that. And, you know, my impulse is when I hear like Tom Cotton, you know, speaking the way he was speaking is to say, oh, you know, you're going too far. But this is actually an attorney general who is going to prosecute parents as domestic terrorists. I'm not sure there is a too far anymore.
One thing I do want to point out, it boggles the mind how Attorney General Garland could sit there and stick by that memo. But if you piece it, we've pieced this together before, but the National School Boards Association, it was a couple of people who wrote this letter to President Biden. But before sending that letter to President Biden, they worked with people in the White House on authoring that letter. One of the authors then got a recent appointment by the Department of Education, so by the Biden administration. But they walked back the language in that letter, and you still have this Attorney General standing by it. But all of this, it's very suspicious. The coordination of this effort, the speed with which the Justice Department and Garland went after parents. This is a scandal, and maybe it will take the Republicans retaking the House and even a majority in the Senate to get to the bottom of what's really going on here.
Well, last week, Merrick Garland admitted that he took action because of that letter from the National School Board Association. So there's really not even like a great mystery or conspiracy here. I think the only thing we're trying to connect at this point is what role the White House played in all of this. And they absolutely did meet with the National School Board Association as well. So the only missing link is the White House talking to the Attorney General. I don't think that there's any big surprise here that they are all coordinated. And this absolutely is a war on parents. And it's absolutely meant to shut down dissent, to shut down speech, to scare parents away from school board meetings, to make sure that they're not sticking up for their kids, and to make sure that this, you know, that the policies that these liberal organizations and this government wants in place stay in place.
It was just astonishing to listen. I listened to almost all of the hearing today, or the questioning, and you heard Cory Booker tried to link the Parkland shooting to domestic terrorism.
Right.
And in fact, the Parkland shooting was because the school administrators and even the local school district, because they failed to remove somebody from the school, they failed to protect the kids, which is what the issue is broadly among parents, where they failed to remove a dangerous individual from the school when they knew that the shooter, the ultimate shooter, was violent. So I found it really rich that Senator Booker would even bring that up, because it kind of made the point that parents across the country are trying to make.
That's exactly it. The parents who are standing up across the country are worried for their kids in a lot of different ways. But, you know, the story out of Loudoun County in Virginia really shook a lot of people, where a dad was sort of the impetus for this whole thing. He was the reason for the National School Board Association letter and for the memo from the Attorney General's office. Had actually had his daughter was raped in a school bathroom, and he had gotten, you know, pretty feisty at a school board meeting, which makes a lot of sense because it was all covered up and it was all just treated in a really hush-hush fashion. So everybody here should be wanting to protect the kids, and yet I don't see that from the federal government. I see a lot of protection for other people, but not for the children across the country who need it.
And the boy who raped that young woman was found guilty this week by a judge. There's another case where he allegedly sexually assaulted another young woman, right, which will be heard before he's sentenced for that crime. But the father was arrested, and Merrick Garland had the audacity last week to act like he hadn't even heard about the case, but then said, well, that's a state, that's not a federal issue, which was kind of the point. But in terms of in terms of shutting parents up, here is the chairwoman of a Minnesota school board telling someone who wanted to speak that if you want to speak at a school board meeting, you're going to have to give us your home address if they wanted to speak. Listen to this.
Or school district staff member. If this occurs, open forum will be closed and the individual will not be allowed to participate in future open forums. Crowd noise or any sort of grandstanding during open forum, including applause, talking, hollering, or any outbursts will result in open forum being closed.
I don't know if you could hear that, but I watched more of the tape where you're required to give your full home address out loud. Yeah. And one of the individuals who was trying to speak said, what? You already have my address. Why? You know, my house is already, so my house can be egged. But again, this is an effort at the local level to shut the parents up, scare them.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and so it's funny because Merrick Garland calling the Loudoun County issue a state, issue or a local issue. Well, what is he here for? I'm really unclear what the role of Merrick Garland is in all of this. If these are all state and local issues.
This is a Justice Department that we've got a few more years, but it's already been highly politicized. And Carol, as Andy McCarthy, who is a former U.S. attorney, said, he said, what they're doing, the process is the penalty. And it's to sick the FBI on them, make the parents think that if they participate in school board meetings, they will be the subject of an investigation. They will have to lawyer up. They might have problems with their employer. This is a gross abuse of investigative power. And before we go, what stops this?
Yeah. Well, what stops this is parents saying no and continuing to speak out all over the country. I think parents have really awoken here, and they see the problems in their children's schools, and they're not going to sit back down, and they're not going to let the government bully them into it. I hope they keep keeping on, because we need it. We need the parents to be involved here, and we need the parents to speak up and fight back against the people who want to shut them down.
And this does not fall along political lines. This does not fall along racial lines. Yeah. These are angry mama bears and daddy bears. Karol Markowicz, thank you for standing up, parents, for parents and the kids in schools for the last year and a half, when paltry few people, if any, were writing about what the teachers' unions were doing to kids across this nation. Karol Markowicz, always a pleasure.